Everyone, got a lovely canal scene today, and what I'm going to show you is how we can convert this from an autumn scene into a winter scene with some snow. It's always good to try and use the photos that you have and just convert them. So I've loosely just drawn out at the bottom where the water is, where the land is, where the distant trees are. I've not bothered too much about the trunks. I'll just paint those in as I go. I'll talk you through the colours and the paper. The paper's Saunders Waterford. It's a cotton paper rough. It's on a block, 12 by 9 size. Colours wise, so far these are pea-sized blob with half a teaspoon of water. I have got raw sienna, cobalt blue, sepia, a grey made with cobalt blue and burnt sienna. So I want that grey to be made up so that it splits out wet and wet on the page. You get the different colours coming through. So the first thing that I'm going to teach you before we even come onto the paper is how to stop getting a green. So what we've got here is we've got raw sienna and we've got cobalt blue. Both of them are transparent colours, so when they mix together they will basically start to create a green. The way to prevent that is to take something that is rosy, this is permanent rose on the tip of a round number 10, into the blue. Now I'm looking to change the blue a tiny little bit, only a touch. I don't want to make it purple, I just want to make it a different tinge of blue. And I'm just going to show you on here this different tinge. So it's very slightly different, and what that helps is if those two now mix together, it makes a grey rather than a green. So that's a little tip for you. It's a very good tip. You could use Naples yellow instead of raw sienna. That's an opaque colour, and that would then push against the cobalt blue and you wouldn't get the mix together. So that's the other option. But Naples yellows tends to be artist quality, and if you're learning and you're on student quality, you don't have that option, or it's an expensive option. Okay, so I'm coming down right the way down to the land line, and I'm wetting with my wash brush, this is a squirrel mop, the whole of this top section. I want it all to be nice and shiny and wet. It's going to give me plenty of time. Now I've got my round number 10, just check it's clean. I'm going to come in with the raw sienna first of all, so I'm going to give that lovely golden hue at the bottom. Sweep that through. So quite horizontal strokes with a little kick up. Rinse that brush off. Just going to take a bit of water off in my hand, and then I'm mixing up that blue again. This is still with my round number 10. I'm just going to sweep that through. So I'm going to hit into that raw sienna. Then I'm going to create some circular motion so that I start to get some clouds. I am pushing down, I am not lifting the brush off. So you're going to push down, keep reloading your brush. And you just want some nice, wispy, wintry clouds. I'm coming into that grey that I've made, I'm giving it a mix again. This is just to make sure that it's not split out on the palette. Then I'm going to come in, start to get a little bit of that grey in, just really towards the top section. Little circular motion again. The more you practice, guys, the better you'll get. A little bit coming through here. Now if I swap down to my round number 6, just check it's clean. Just going to pick up a little bit of that grey, just sweep through a few little bits so that I haven't got that total split out from the dark to the light. I want to balance it out a little bit. So I'm just going to flick through a few wispy bits of the grey at the bottom. Okay, with that same number 6, I'm coming into some green. So this is made by dipping sap green and ultramarine blue together. Now I've chosen sap green because it's just an easy green that is, and I can add to it. And the ultramarine blue I've chosen because it granulates and it's not too much of a shooty pigment. Some blues are quite shooty. This one tends to sit quite nicely. And I just want to come in and dot in some very distant trees. I have loosely drawn a tree line in. That's coming nicely. Rinse that brush off. Just take the excess water off. I'm just doing it with my fingers today. I'm coming into this sepia. So I want some of this to be a bit darker. The darker you get this edge, the more everything will stand out. So it's worth being bold with the watercolour and that dark, just to get that nice edge. So I'm just keeping it towards the bottom of the tree line. Everything's still nice and wet. I'm going to bring a little bit through here as well. I'm going to take on a little bit more of the raw sienna. So just to bring this bit to life, I don't want it all to be snow, so I'm going to leave this bit sort of blending through here. So it's already wet, I'm just taking some thicker paint on just to help that come to life. If I pick up my rigger, and I'm going to come into the sepia mix and twizzle around upside down. You can twizzle the painting upside as well. I find it easier to paint to a point doing it this way. I just want to get some tree trunks starting to appear. Some of these can be a bit looser then. Less is more. We're not going to put loads in. This section's quite bare. I'm going to pull up some of this colour. So I'm pulling through from the sepia and through the raw sienna here. Just varying the strokes as if you were doing brambly bits, but we're going to convert these into trees. If you I've come a little bit too far there, so I'm just going to alter this line to make it darker. I've got this big tree coming in here, which is going to start to get the base off. I'm just doing a few more lines here. You're just starting to get a little bit of wispiness. I'll just twizzle this back round. It's just easier to paint to a point when you're painting downwards. I'm just going to alter this here with my round number 6 and just get that dark into that I've gone a little bit wrong, and then that's going to work nicely. Okay, so I don't want to do too much at this stage because I need these trees to be quite sharp. So I'm going to dry this off and I'll come back. Okay, so that's nicely dry. I'm coming into the sepia with my round number 10. What I want to do now is some dry brushing so I create those wintry branches. So I'm going to hold my round number 10 like this, so I'm very close to the paper, and then I can start to create, in fact I'll come right way here, some wispy wintry branches. So it's a dragging action. It's using the side of the brush, and you want to keep it really, really close to the paper. I'm just going to start to create these wintry branches. You're basically catching the texture of the paper, and it's a really quick way to create wintry branches on trees. Takes a bit of practice, as everything does, but you will get there. Rinse out my round number 10. I'm going to drop down to my number 6 and rigger, and now I just want to sharpen up some of these trees. So we're going to connect those whispery branches to more chunky bits and bigger branches. So this one here is quite important. This is quite a focal point, so take a little bit more time with this one. I'm going to use whichever size brush I feel comfortable with. So at the minute I'm in with my number 6. It's got pretty decent point, and I can go quite far with it. These thicker branches. Keep that colour nice and strong. If you find you haven't quite got enough of the wispier bits, you can always come back onto those later. So I'm following the pattern of the tree. Because I want to get a nice shape here. There's times when you can make trees up and get away with it, and there's times that you need to really focus, and this is one of those times where you just need to focus a little bit because I can't make it all up. Well, I could, but I want this to be a very stunning tree. So I'm just taking a little bit more time. Can twizzle around. I find it easier to get to that point by painting down. You can always turn your photo round as reference to help. I'm going to pop some in now, and when I'm doing these ones I'm coming up to the wispier bits, but I don't want to eliminate all of the soft bits behind. So I've got a soft chunk here, I'm going to put a hard chunk next to it. So it sort of gives a sense of distance. These can be less precise. You can get away with a few wispy bits and it just holds together. You've got your main focal point in that tree. That's where your eye's going to go. So just remember to stagger your branches so they don't all come off the trunk at the same time. Makes them look more natural. The more you do trees, the better you get with it, as with everything. It's just all about practice. It's a learned skill, and you will develop the muscle memory to be able to draw, to be able to paint. Stick an odd one in random. Stick something in the opposite direction. That always works as well nicely. Okay, I'll twizzle round and we'll have a look. Make this a little bit thicker. Just going to create a little bit more dry brushing here. You can come over to create a little bit more. This is with my number 6, so use whichever brush you're comfortable with. That's working really nicely. I'll give those ones a bit of a rinse out. Next we're going to come on to the water. So we haven't got the green to reflect because it's going to be snowy white, so we've just got to think about what we are reflecting. We're reflecting mainly the sky. Make sure my brush is nice and clean. Get into these little bits. It's not as clean as I'd like. Okay, so I've got some more raw sienna. We're going to reflect the colour from the sky. The first bit we're going to pop in is a little bit of raw sienna. This is going to go towards the back. I'm just going to rinse my brush out. That's a little bit stronger. Just take a damp brush in and just move that around a little bit. If you can keep quite horizontal strokes, it works really well as a surface of water. I'm using my round number 10 here. A little bit more of this blue. Just make sure I've got a dab of rose into it. Changing that tone of colour. I'm going to come in, create a cloudy effect. So we're still reflecting the cloud. So we're going to reflect the cloud, leave the gaps, and then I'm going to show you how you can then make it look like the surface of the water. I'm going to swap down to a number 6. Just going to spread some of this through the raw sienna, and then I'm going to pick up some of the grey. Take some of the grey in. With my number 6 still. A few little wispy bits. Okay, and then I'm going to pick up some sepia, just wiggling out of shot, with my number 6. And I'm just going to come along just give a darker edge near the bank. A little bit of dark here, a little bit of dark here, a little bit of dark there. So I've just chosen those edges that reflect there, but not all the way down this side. If I give this brush a bit of a rinse, I'm going to dry it off, and what I want to do is just pull through. So this is a damp brush, horizontal strokes. So I'm pulling some of that colour, but it's horizontal on the page, and this is just going to start to give a surface to the water. So you can do this with a flat brush, you can do it with a round brush. The important thing is that you keep those strokes horizontal to the page. Pulling the sepia out's the easiest one, but the other stuff will move as well. Just give your brush a rinse if you need to. We're going to put the tree reflection on when this is dry. So this should start to make it feel like the surface of the water. I've got a bit of a hard edge here, so with a damp brush, because I don't want that there, we're just going to work it so that it softens in. Not a wet brush, it's a damp brush, so it's just blended that in a little bit. Okay, I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. I'm going to pop a little bit of colour onto the snow. Just lobbed a bit of water there. So we don't want the snow to be totally white. So we're going to take some water over both areas, drop a bit of colour in, and we're going to again reflect the colours from the sky. So we've got a little bit of raw sienna on both. If you're very careful, a little bit of rose works quite nicely, though you've got to be very careful because rose can be quite strong. We have got a little bit of that in the blue in the sky, but it just gives a bit of warmth into the snow because it can look very, very cold. If you don't want the rose, you don't have to put it in. That's a little bit of rose on both bits, and then just take a little bit of that blue through. So you just want to pick out a few areas, leave a few areas totally white, and it's going to give you a sense of shadow on here, reflecting the colours from the sky. That's working really nicely. If you go too bold, this is a great snow tip, just get some kitchen towel. You can just dab it off a little bit and it works fantastically for snow. It's not often that I will tell you can dab off, but you can do with snow. I didn't necessarily need to dab off, but it's worked. So that's just a little tip for you. If I come on now and reflect some of these trees. So it's a bit like when you did the butterfly prints when you were at school and you folded it over and you got that reflection there. This is what's going to happen with the tree. You're going to get is if you folded that over, you're going to see, you won't see the bottom part of the tree, but you'll see the top part. Then you'll see the bits coming this way. Now, you can usually get away with something that looks very like the tree itself. If you struggle to do the mirror image, it's much easier if you turn it this way for you to see which way, because it can be quite difficult to reverse in your head which way these branches need to go. So it's showing you here that you can just follow it and just follow it down. So that's a really good tip. If you're struggling, then you can just turn it sideways and know which way to go. But basically, something that looks like it will work. You've just got to remember that bottom part of the tree, you're not going to see much of it there. I'm going to also use my rigger for these finer ones. So you're going to see the real tops here. So I'm just going to pop something in to mirror those top edges. And again here you're just going to see the very tops. So you've got to get the trunks in and a little bit of dry brushing. So I'm just getting this in fairly quick. Use whichever brush you're comfortable with, around number 6 or around number 10. Remember, you're holding it like this. You will find it much easier if you turn this upside down because you're following that same pattern of arching as you scrape onto the paper. Mind your snow. You don't want to come onto those bits. You're just creating the reflection. Just keep reloading your brush and you're coming along creating those little bits. And twizzle it back round, and then whilst it's still wet, if you have got a flat brush, it will really help at this point, but you can do this with a round. So I'm going to wet it, I'm going to dab it off with some kitchen towel, and I'm going to come through so it's not too wet, and I'm going to break up that reflection, horizontal strokes. So it's the same as when we did the water. If it's too wet, then you'll end up with blobby bits. See, that's why you've got to dry it off a little bit. You're just going to work your way along. Horizontal strokes. The damp brush should just agitate the paint a little bit if it started to dry, so it should still work. And it's going to give it a real sense of surface. Little wiggle here and there, so that's holding my brush horizontally and wiggling downwards, and I'm just using the sepia and it's just moving it down. Okay, I'll dry that one off. So you might have just missed that tiny bit at the bottom because I've just realised as I pushed it up that the pad had moved down. So when I've done this, I have with the damp brush hit here and wiggled down, and I've got those wiggle lines just where I've pulled the sepia. So horizontal stroke, keeping the brush on the paper. Okay, so we're nearly done now. There's just a few little bits. So I'm picking up around number 6. Just check it's nice and clean. And I'm picking up some of the bluey mix. What I want to do now is just give a sense of shadow really. So if I come through, I'm just choosing a direction of light, which I'm saying is from behind. And then I'm going to start to just pop a bit of shadow in because it just brings everything to life. Don't want it to be too strong. Bring those out. I'm going to twizzle round, do a little bit of dry brushing with the blue. If you move quite quickly, you can dab this off a little bit in the same way that you did the softer shadow. So this is harder shadow. You can just dab with the kitchen towel and it just lifts it a little bit. It's got a really nice effect. So we've got a really nice slopey bank effect now. If you want to add any little extra bits of shadow where there might be undulations, you can do. I tend to say it's best that you just pop a few in and then with a wet brush just soften the top edge. So we just wet brush, soften the top edge, so you haven't got a total hard edge, and then that tends to work quite nicely. Okay, the last thing that I'm going to show you is a tip to make it look a bit more sort of sparkly. So I have got some Winsor & Newton, and now this is a different pot, Winsor & Newton Iridescent medium. I shall pop a link in the description, and it is basically a sparkly medium you can use for watercolour. Now I have problems with childproof caps, so this is why I'm using a very, very ancient bottle of Winsor & Newton. I poured it in. It tends to last for a long amount of time, but the caps tend to break on me. So if I bring a little bit of this on, it is a very, very fine sparkle and it's great for snow. I'm going to bring it up close to the camera so you can see. It works fantastically in a dark sky as well, and you can bring it onto the water to make things frosty. If I take a little bit just onto this tree, you can get a bit of a frosty tree. I absolutely love it. It always comes out at winter time. Take a little bit on here so that I've got a bit on that canal as well. Right, so if I try and bring this close up, it's a watercolour medium, so it does all wash off everything. And I can show you, I think. Can you see the sparkle? Just a very hint of sparkle. It's a fantastic thing. So that's Winsor & Newton Iridescent medium. I'll pop a link so you can find it in the description. Okay, so I'll dry that off and pop a mount on. So there we go. So it's got a mount on. So it just shows you how you can convert something like that to something very wintry and beautiful without actually there needing to be snow there. So I really hope you've enjoyed it. Please do like, subscribe and share my tutorials. I shall pop another video here for you and a playlist just here, and I shall see you next time. Bye.